Hello and welcome. I just fed the rats and I'm hearing a lot of movement. I gave them some pear today, and pear can be hit and miss. But for the ones that hit, I think they're running around trying to hide. Hi, Aggie. Yeah, Aggie just ran all the way up the cage, and they were squeaking a second ago. So, Anyway, hello. My cat is here. Hold on. My cat is here. So today we're going to be talking about vets, because that is like a big subject in the rat community, in any pet community really, but in the rat community, rodent community, like any person, any pet owner who has to have like a social animal that needs to go to the vet a lot, vets are a big point of conversation. So let's talk about it a little bit, because it feels like since the start of the pandemic, a lot of people got pets like at the start of the pandemic, and there's just been such a boom in pet ownership that vets, they're overwhelmed a lot of the time, most of the time. And it feels like there's forming this disconnect between vets and the owners of the pets that they're seeing. And I think that that's not good. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that and stuff like that, just for funsies. Now, a couple of disclaimers. What works for me may not work for you. And also, I'm mainly going to be talking about vets from the US because I live in the US. My experiences with vets from the Southwest and the South of the US. So I don't have much experience. I don't have much knowledge of vets elsewhere, but just keep that in mind. So as I said, there's been like a big boom in pets, and like a lot of vets ended up leaving the industry during the pandemic because of the number of people who are getting pets and the number of pets that are being put to sleep, and like the hardships on that, and the way people are treating them, all this kind of stuff. Like, it's not an easy job, and I don't think people always understand that. It's not like all day just seeing puppies and dogs that are healthy. It's like, I doubt very many vets go a full day without having to put a pet to sleep. And obviously they care about animals, otherwise they wouldn't be in that job. So that's not an easy thing. And then watching your clients like break down is also not an easy thing. And most people will when their pet is put to sleep. Like, most people, that's how they show their emotions, is through crying and like that sort of thing. So in my experience, the best way to go about dealing with vets is just be very, very kind. And I know that seems obvious, but the thing is, people don't actually behave that way. People, like in the States at the very least, a lot of people think that the best way to get what you want is just be a massive asshole. And that is not true. You will get much further by being a very nice, kind person than you will be by being, an asshole. So the thing with this is, and now I understand that for some people this is difficult, and it's not necessarily that you're a bad person. My instinct isn't always the nicest thing my first go. Like, I'm a loudmouth, foul-mouthed, stubborn, opinionated person, and sometimes I have to really tuck that down, so as to not make everyone around me miserable. Because even though I'm like that, doesn't mean I have to put that in other people who may think that I'm rude and bitchy. So there is that. You will get much further by just tucking all that away. Here's the thing. You can complain to other people all you want. Your friends, your family, you can complain about that vet till you're blue in the face. Just don't do it to the vet themselves. And there's many reasons for this. One, if you're a difficult client, they are not going to want to work with you. They are not going to be happy to see you, which means they're not going to try and make your experience easier. And you can actually get banned in most practices in the US. The thing with the US is that most vets have been bought up by corporations. So if you get banned from one, you're pretty much banned from like all of them from that corporation. So it's better to just not do that. So like a list of do and don'ts for vets. So the do is pretty easy. Just be kind. Just do that and you're fine. But don't complain about the prices to them, because they do not have control over that. Because again, most vets in the US are owned by corporations, and the corporations are who set the prices. That's why in the middle of the pandemic, for me anyway, it went from having no exam fee on euthanasia appointments to having an exam fee, is because a lot of people started having to put their pets to sleep as opposed to getting them treatment due to lack of funds, and the vet companies or the companies that own the vets did not like that. So they added a fee to make money off of it because corporations are inherently evil. So don't complain about pricing. Don't bring a second rat in the hopes that you can sneak in a second appointment under the guise of your first appointment. Really, really don't do that. They really, really hate that. Don't be mean to the vet techs and then nice to the vet, because the vet techs do a lot of the work. They'll tell the vet that you're being rude to them. So it doesn't really benefit you at all. Don't yell at anybody. And don't threaten to put your pet to sleep because the prices are too high, which is a thing that some people do to try and force the vet to give them discounts. Do not seek out discounts. Just go in, be pleasant, get through your appointment, and it'll be fine. Now, if things are happening that you're uncomfortable with, just tell them that. Just say, hey, I'm not really comfortable with this. I'd rather do it this way, or I'd rather try this method. Like, for example, since the start of the pandemic, a lot of vets will see and do the exam in the back as opposed to in the exam room with you, which I hate. I hate it a lot. And I understand where vets are coming from when they say it's not that big of a deal. But before they started doing this, they would do the exam in front of me, and then we would discuss a treatment plan. They would take my rat back and do whatever they needed to do in the back, and then bring them back to me. And since they started doing this, I've had multiple vets at multiple practices do things with my pet that they did not get my consent for. So just a list. Some of these things are very mild, some of them very much not so. And to be clear, I probably would have been okay with the majority of the things on this list, but I was not okay with the fact that they did it without talking to me or explaining to me the cost of any of it, because that feels like they're trying to trick me. So things vets have done to my rats without getting my consent first include a skin scrape, giving them an anti-parasitic, giving them extra anesthesia for an x-ray, doing what was it called? Cryogenics therapy, which is basically freezing something on them. Doing a second surgical procedure. They were in to have a tumor removed, and there was something else going on, and without calling me to make sure it was okay, they just did that second procedure without talking to me. And doing a post-mortem exam on a rat that I decided to have euthanized to see basically if I could have saved them, which I couldn't have, which is why I chose to euthanize them. So all of that has happened when I was not in the room with my pet when they were being examined. So now when they ask if they can take my pet to the back to do the exam, I, in general, will be like, I'm not really comfortable with that. Can we just do it here? And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. But I've been taught pretty definitively that if I cannot see what is happening, they will take liberties with my rats that I am not okay with sometimes. And at the very least, I would like to be informed about, because with the surgery in particular, if something had gone wrong during that, I would have been livid. And then with the extra anesthesia, that was bad because my rat was messed up for over 24 hours after that. But I do not yell at the vet. I do not get angry. I just say, I'm not comfortable with that. I do complain when I'm away from the vet. I complain to Cappy. I complain on here. Because there is no harm in that. The vets don't hear it. And if you don't vent the frustration, it's just going to build up. So it's fine to complain to people who aren't the vet. And you might be thinking, well, how's the vet ever going to learn if you don't tell them what they're doing wrong? And the answer is they won't. They're not going to learn anyway, because I have never once told a vet that what they're doing is wrong or what they think is incorrect and had them actually listen to me, no matter how severe or minor it was. For example, I just remember once telling my vet that it's not okay to keep rats in tanks because they produce a lot of ammonia with their urine. Because they pee a lot, they produce a lot of ammonia. And so tanks aren't the safest option for them. And she nodded, and not 10 minutes later talked about having rats in a tank. Like, that's how she would keep them. And it's just that they don't necessarily listen to you, the owner, because they don't necessarily take your knowledge at face value. So I don't really bother trying to correct vets. If I go to a vet that is doing something wrong that can be detrimental, I just don't go to that vet again. because it's easier than trying to teach them. So, and that might sound arrogant, like, oh, you're trying to teach a vet. I'm not an expert in cats and dogs. I just trust my vet when they tell me something's going on. But I do know a lot about rats. I'm talking specifically rat stuff. And if they're doing something that could be detrimental to my rat's health, or they aren't showing at least a decent amount of knowledge based on what I know, then yes, I will leave. And when I find a vet I like, I work very hard on building a relationship with them, because that is ultimately the best thing for you and your pet. If your vet likes you, your experience is just going to be better because they're going to be happy to see you. And they see, the average vet probably sees 20 to 30 clients a day. And if you are the bright spot in their day, you're going to have a better time and they're going to have a better time. I always go in wanting to make sure I am not the reason someone has a bad day. Because that's just not a pleasant thought for me, that I ruin someone's day. And I know some people do like that, but I'm not like that. And I imagine most of you aren't like that. So I just go in trying to be pleasant and make sure that, you know, at the very least, dealing with me is easy. So that it's like a nice little break for them. And that helps build a relationship with the vet, and then they start listening to you more. And they don't automatically dismiss what you're saying because you're just random client number 16 of the day. You are this person with this many pets with this much knowledge. They learn about you when you're pleasant. And, you know, I don't think vets are infallible. I'm pretty blunt on here about how you shouldn't listen to their advice on husbandry if it goes against advice you're getting from experienced rat owners, because exotics vets don't know husbandry, they know medicine. And I'm also very, very vocal about when my vets are doing things that are not aligning with what they need to do for my rats. So, for example, vets are very, very, very stubborn about giving prednisone with ear infections, and I understand why. However, when they don't do that, you end up with a rat with a permanent head tilt like Polly, or it can get even worse than what happened with Polly. Like, she did bounce back because I did eventually get her the prednisone, but she could have had like a very teeny tiny minor head tilt if they had given me the prednisone at the beginning, like they should have. But they don't like to listen to you on that kind of thing because prednisone can be so harmful to rats. However, sometimes not giving prednisone can be worse. It's things like that. And I also think that sometimes vets feel like they shouldn't be held accountable for their mistakes because, you know, it's not like a person dying, it's a pet dying. And I disagree with that. I've heard vets say that this just happens. Sometimes you make a mistake and a pet dies and you just need to forgive the vet. And I disagree with that to an extent, because sometimes mistakes are made. Like, sometimes really weird cases come in and you don't know what's going on. And like, there's not much you can do about that. I remember my rat Rowley had a stroke, but her symptoms were really weird. And it's like, at the time I didn't know what was going on. The vet couldn't figure out what was going on. And it's only now with a lot more knowledge on strokes that I realized what was going on with Rowley. And to be fair, I don't think if we had gotten her on prednisone, which is the treatment for a stroke, I don't think it would have made much of a difference, because I don't know when the stroke happened, and it took me a couple of days to get her into the vet because appointments are like that. So I don't think it would have mattered ultimately. But at that time, no one could tell me what was going on. No one knew what was going on. And I even have an extremely experienced vet now who works with a rat rescue. And when Spectre, Cappy's rat, went in for surgery because she had what we thought was a weird lump, it turned out she was lactating, and she was a 1.5 years old at the time. She never had met any male rats, certainly never any intact male rats, so there was no reason for her to be lactating. What I've learned since then is that is a symptom of a pituitary tumor, and Spectre did get a pituitary tumor, but it is not a common symptom, and it is one that only affects female rats. So the vet had never seen it before. I didn't know about that. Cappy didn't know about that. And so we ended up doing a surgery on her, and she was never right after that. And the pituitary tumor really took her out after that. And that is no one's fault. However, what happened with Ezra, which is where I told them that he needed more than 10 days worth of antibiotics. And they said, well, let's see how he does after 10 days. And on day 8, I called them and said that he's doing really well, but I would like to extend the course a little bit just to make sure that the infection is really gone. And they ignored me until day 12, when he was completely out of antibiotics. It allowed the infection that had gotten into his bone to spread wildly, and he ended up passing away because they didn't want to listen to me. Even though I had done everything they had said, I had gotten him the x-ray, I had put him on the medication, I was following the instructions, they didn't want to listen to me, and he ended up passing away because the infection became resistant to the antibiotics because he couldn't stay on them long enough. That, I think they messed up on, and I do think that's their fault. So there is a give and take. Sometimes vets can mess up and it's not their fault, and getting angry with them really doesn't help anything. And sometimes it is their fault and getting angry with them doesn't help anything. Just leave. Just find a different vet. That is the best thing you can do, because ultimately it's going to be better for you and for your pet, and it's the best option as opposed to starting a fight or yelling at someone. Just choose to leave. Finding vets for rats can be extremely difficult because even the experienced ones, well, what they're mostly experienced with is going to be, for at least in the States, at least in most states, it's going to be pet store rats. I cannot tell you how many times I've brought my rats in and they were sick. Obviously, I'm bringing them in, they're sick, and the vet said that they looked so healthy and they were so old when they were like a little over 18 months, which is, you know, it's old, but it's nothing to like blink at. But the thing is, they're used to seeing pet store rats or who don't live very long most of the time, or they're used to seeing rats that were so close to the brink of death that there wasn't much they could do. So when I would bring my rats in, and they'd say things like that to me, and it confused me because obviously I'm a part of the rat community, and no one I follow would wait to take their rat in if they thought something was wrong. It's basically like, something's wrong, vet appointment. So it always confused me when they would say they're so healthy, until I figured out that, oh, of course, the rat community is a little bubble of people who love rats, and a lot of people who get pet rats don't necessarily care about them that much. So they do wait to take them in until they absolutely have to, which is a bummer to think about. I remember I brought in my rat Daisy because she was covered in scabs. She had mites, and at the time I didn't have any Revolution on hand, so I took her to the vet to get her treated because it was faster than waiting for the Revolution to come to my house. And so to me, she looked bad because she was covered in scabs. And I was just like really wanting to get her taken care of, get her fixed up. And I remember the vet coming in and being like, well, I don't know if she has mites because she just looks so healthy. And I stood there just like, okay, this is healthy to you? Like, she was covered. And he didn't want to do the mite treatment because of that. And I was just like, okay, can we though? He thought that she was getting beat up by the other rats because she looked too healthy to have mites, which she was not getting beat up. I would have known if she was getting beat up. So keep that in mind as well. A lot of times when vets see rats or any exotics, they're very, very sick. Vets will really appreciate knowing that you care about your pet and that you're bringing them in, even when it's like a minor thing. Some vets will get annoyed if you bring them in and they feel like you shouldn't have bothered, but like most vets will appreciate that you care enough about them to bring them in just to make sure they're okay. So just always keep that in mind. Like, vets will respond well if you very obviously care. So I'll tell you what I always say, which is find a vet that you feel is compatible with you. Be very kind to them, try to build a relationship, and go in armed to the teeth with knowledge, because that in the long run is going to be the most valuable thing to your rat's life, is making sure you know every possible thing that could be wrong with them before you step foot in that office. That is the most important thing. And then try to have an open and friendly discussion with the vet. And if you have to be stubborn, be politely stubborn. It can be hard to figure out how to do that, but it is worth it if you learn how to be very stubborn in a very polite way. So yeah, this felt like more of a rambly video than normal, but I had a lot of thoughts and I wanted to talk about it. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, you know what to do. All the fun stuff down below. And I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye!